This part's called The Mask We Wear, and it's just one of the harder parts for me to read to you guys. So bear with me. The mask we wear. As I got older, my relationships reflected the chaos I grew up around. My first serious boyfriend was different. He showed me what a healthy family could look like. His family loved me and treated me like one of their own. And for the first time, I felt what it was like to belong. But as much as I wanted to hold on to that, the relationship didn't last. Then came my daughter's father, who was taken from me far too soon. Losing him to violence was one of the hardest moments of my life. He was murdered when I was pregnant with our child, leaving me to navigate single motherhood with unimaginable grief. After that, I found myself in a couple toxic relationships that mirrored the dysfunction I had been surrounded by growing up. One of the hardest was with a man who sold drugs. He brought me into a world I didn't belong in, a world filled with trap houses and illegal dealings. I'd sit there counting money, questioning him, and questioning myself. How can you say you love the black community while tearing it apart like this? I'd ask, knowing full well I shouldn't have even been there. But I stayed, convincing myself it was temporary, that I could change him, save him. But in reality, I didn't think I deserved better, and I was terrified of him. And then there was the relationship that really broke me. When he came along, he seemed like a safe place to land. He was attentive and sweet, or so I thought. But it wasn't too long before the cracks started to show. He wasn't just my partner, he felt like another child. He couldn't keep a job to save his life, which meant I had to carry the financial weight of our relationship. I paid his rent when he did have his own place, and when we lived together, he was still no help, whether financially or with the children. I would work multiple jobs to make sure I could afford what he and the kids needed while forgetting about what I needed. To make matters worse, I was always the one driving him around. It didn't matter if I was exhausted or stressed. If he didn't if he needed to be somewhere, it was on me to get him there. He would promise to change, to step up, to finally be the man he claimed to be. But those promises were like sand slipping through my fingers. There was nothing to hold on to. And then there were the lies, the cheating, and the stealing. He was a master manipulator, turning everything around on me and making me question myself instead of him. If I brought up an issue, he'd find a way to make me feel like the problem. That kind of manipulation makes you feel small. Like no matter what you do, you'll never be good enough. Physically, the stress began to take its toll. I started having migraines that would leave me in bed for hours. My hair began falling out in clumps, and my weight fluctuated as I either ate my feelings or couldn't stomach anything. The constant tension in my body led to back pain and stomach problems. I was carrying the weight of the relationship on my shoulders, literally. And it was breaking me down piece by piece. I went to doctor after doctor, desperate for answers, but no one could figure out a diagnosis. They ran tests, prescribed medications, and told me to reduce stress, as if that was an option. Each visit left me more hopeless than the last, trapped in a body that felt like it was betraying me as much as the man I was with. In the midst of it all, I leaned heavily on weed. At first, it was a way to cope with the overwhelming stress, temporary escape from the chaos in my mind. But over time, it became a crutch. I smoked more and more, trying to numb myself from the reality I didn't want to face. The relief was always fleeting, but in those moments of calm, I felt like I could breathe again. I didn't realize that while it dulled the pain, it also dulled my ability to see clearly, to recognize that I was stuck in a cycle I needed to break free from. The hardest part wasn't even the lies or the betrayal. It was the slow realization that I was pouring everything I had to someone who didn't value me or my efforts. I was exhausted, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. Every time I thought about walking away, I convinced myself to stay. I told myself that if I just tried harder, if I just loved him a little more, he would change. And then were the nagging thoughts. Who would want a single mom of 3? He knew how to play on those insecurities. He would tell me that no one else would want me, that I was damaged goods. And then when Kevin Samuels and the whole red pill ideology became popular, he jumped on it and used it to reinforce those ideas. He loved reminding me how men supposedly wouldn't value a woman with kids. At first, I pushed back, telling myself it wasn't true. But over time, the constant repetition started to wear me down. The seeds of doubt that he planted grew until I started to believe it. I began to internalize the idea that I was lucky to have anyone at all, even someone who treated me like this. It wasn't just him keeping me stuck. I was keeping myself stuck by believing the lies he fed me. Those words became chains, binding me to a relationship I should have left long before. The truth is, I was wearing a mask too. I let everyone believe that everything was okay. Sorry. I let everyone believe that everything was okay because I didn't want them to see me as a failure. To the outside world, I was holding it together, smiling, working, doing what I could to appear strong. Inside, though, I was crumbling. I didn't want anyone to see the cracks or know how much I was struggling. Admitting that I wasn't okay felt like admitting defeat. And I wasn't ready to face that. Even now, I struggle with the fear of being seen as anything less than capable. Looking back now, I can see how I attracted these relationships. The chaos felt familiar, even comfortable in a twisted way. I wasn't just the victim of their actions, I played a role too. I ignored the red flags, excused the unexcusable, and stayed in situations I knew were damaging. I had to face the hard truth. I was choosing these relationships because deep down, I didn't believe I deserved better. Accepting our part in toxic relationships is one of the hardest things to do, but it's necessary. We can't heal what we don't acknowledge. And I had to own the fact that I was losing myself trying to hold him together. I was staying because I didn't want to face the emptiness that would come with leaving. And I had to learn to stop betraying myself in order to keep someone else happy. And that was the first step towards reclaiming my power, my peace, and my life.